No birthday party. No cake. Just the sting of my mom's words. We need money for your sister's vacation. That night I sat at the table with cold pizza when my phone lit up. On speaker a voice said, "Boss, your private jet is ready." My dad's fork hit the floor. The silence was louder than the call itself, and in that moment everything I had buried for years ripped wide open. I'm Zephyr Quinn, and this is my story. Before I share it with you, I want to know you're here with me. Just say listening in the comments or tell me where you are. Sometimes even the smallest connection makes a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. And if this story touches you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It means more than numbers. It tells me I'm not alone in this, that someone out there values my voice. No birthday party. No reservation at the bistro. Just the cold Boise air of an early fall Friday curling around the red roof of the house I grew up in, the porch swing creaking like it remembered things I didn't want to say out loud. Mom's garden smelled faintly of apples. I parked the rental Camry at the curb and sat for a beat rehearsing a smile that didn't feel borrowed, then walked up the steps with a box of bakery cookies I didn't need. Mom opened the door with flour on her cheek, and that bright automatic joy she saved for company and holidays. "You look so grown, Zephyr," she said, like I'd been frozen at 18 and thawed just now. Dad hovered behind her, a steady silhouette and a new button-down, a man who preferred explanations to apologies. I hugged them both, breathing in the cake-warm kitchen and the soft ache of being home. The living room hadn't changed. The scuffed oak table I once did homework on. The wall of curated pride, Brielle's glass trophies, lacquered ribbons, framed photos of her mid-leap, mid-spin, mid-speech. The Qley green Europe board dominated the opposite wall's sticky notes for Paris, Rome, a hand-drawn heart over Bali. In the hallway, a familiar hesitation tugged somewhere upstairs. My own award slept in a cardboard box under the bed, the lid bowed by old paper and dust. "The bistro will understand," Mom called from the kitchen, her voice quick with purpose. "We'll go next year and do it properly. But honey, we decided to move the budget to Brielle's trip so she can secure the best workshops. It's a chance she can't miss. Next year. Properly." I nodded like I was agreeing to reschedule a dentist appointment and not an evening I'd quietly held onto for months. "It's fine," I said. "Really." Brielle breezed in, phone up light hitting her like it always knew where to land. "Okay, picture it," she said, eyes sparkling. "Paris sunrise reels. Rome food crawls, then Bali for the breathwork series. My followers are going to eat this up." She kissed my cheek and smelled like citrus and ambition. "Happy birthday, Z," she sang, already swiping open her notes app. "Wait till you see the content calendar." Dad leaned over the counter, brows knit as he scrolled on his tablet. "We need the right plug adapters. And voltage. I'm not paying for a fried hairdryer in Venice." I washed my hands and slipped into the choreography. I knew apron strings tied cutting boards steady, the quiet child's way of proving his worth with competence. Mom stirred sauce, asked me to slice mushrooms we probably didn't need because the pizza she'd ordered was already on the way. She talked visas and travel insurance while I chopped and nodded and wondered when being easy became my identity. "Decaf?" I asked as I opened a cabinet and found it empty. Mom blinked a beat late. "Oh, I forgot. I'll pick some up tomorrow. It's okay," I said. It wasn't about coffee. The doorbell rang and the pizza arrived, too large, glossy with cheese and dotted with olives I've always hated. I grabbed a slice anyway. Dad tried a conversational bridge. "So work. Still. Computer's education stuff," I said. "It's going. What kind of content should I shoot in the Louvre?" Brielle cut in already, angling her screen toward Mom. "Voiceover or face-to-camera? The algorithm hates long captions right now." Dad's question shrank between us. An untied shoelace kicked under the table. The Europe board watched, crowded with arrows and hopes taped in place. Mom set plates and hummed a tune from nowhere, the domestic metronome of a woman busy being useful. When my phone lit up on the counter office, it was a clean white rectangle of the life I never explained. I flipped it face down. Not tonight. Not yet. We ate. We pretended olives were a small thing. We pretended next year was a promise and not a pattern. The cake came out of the fridge with a fanfare that felt thinner than the frosting, and there it was in blue piping "Happy Birthday, Zeph." The same bakery always used for Brielle's recitals competition's milestones. Familiar hands, familiar mistakes. "We told them your full name," Mom said, flustered. "They must have used the template." "It's okay," I repeated and smiled through the singing while something in me hollowed out to make room for the sound. They passed me the knife. I cut the first slice for Brielle without thinking, old reflex. Dad's fork clicked off the plate and clattered to the floor, a simple accident that echoed too loud. He laughed it off. We all did. The phone buzzed again, another office call, a quiet pulse against the countertop. I inhaled tasted sugar and a faint metal edge and pressed the side button until the screen went black. The silence we kept felt like a contract. After dishes, I drifted to the porch, letting the night settle on my shoulders. The garden glowed softly. The swing kept its tired rhythm. I could hear Brielle in the kitchen, her words rising and falling in the bright, confident cadence of someone certain she is the center of the frame. Behind that, Mom's gentler river, Dad's steady baritone, my family whole and humming with me tucked at the edge. If I told them everything tonight, would they hear me as their son or as a walking solution? I watched my breath fog and fade. I decided to sleep here, to stay in this moment a little longer, even if my silence was starting to feel like betrayal. In the morning, the house had the hushed dignity of Saturdays. I carried my duffel upstairs and paused at the threshold of my old room. The poster edges curled in on themselves. The desk still bore the ghost of a math problem in pencil where pressure had bitten the wood. I knelt, reached into the cold dark, and dragged out the cardboard box that held the person I used to be. Dust lifted and glittered in the light like someone had shaken a snow globe. The lid groaned. Inside, ribbons with my name typed small and neat, a brass plate that misprinted the second R in Harper, a certificate for a state science fair, the silver pin awarded for a prototype that barely ran but made judges lean in. I could hear the yard below as clearly as I'd heard it, then the oak leaves sifting the wind. Brielle's laughter stretching the afternoon long. We were explorers once, hide-and-seek champions, collaborators in building cities out of shoeboxes. Before the kites drifted apart, before hers found the thermals, and mine learned to fly close to the ground where the air didn't shake. Snapshots unspooled. My 12th birthday canceled because her ballet troupe secured a last-minute performance slot. Mom's voice soft with apology and excitement, promising a better celebration next time. The crimson ink of a cafe schedule at 15, my name next to Saturday, dawns at Boise Brew, so I could buy a refurbished laptop that whined when it got hot. The 18th vanished under the confetti of her cheer selection, a cake knife scraping plates in a room I wasn't in. Later, a belated card from an aunt with a crisp $10 bill folded just right. Don't spend it all in one place, she'd written, as if the joke made it bigger. Between those frames, one face stands out with a clarity that eclipses entire summers, Dr. Maeve Quinn, physics teacher disguised as a conspiracy of possibility. She found me in a hallway after class one day and asked to see the notes I kept pretending weren't worth keeping. "You're building something here," she said, tapping the tangle of ideas I'd been too shy to call a design. "If it helps one kid understand a concept that used to be a wall that matters, build it ugly first, then build it better." She drove me to the state fair when my parents were at Brielle's regional showcase, her old station wagon rattling with tote bags and good intentions. I remember the exhibition hall, cold as a rink and buzzing like a hive. I remember the way judges leaned in the questions that scared me, and then didn't the end-of-day announcement where my name landed in second place and felt like oxygen. I took the pin and smiled for a photographer who would mislabel me in a caption no one in Boise clipped for a scrapbook. I rode home with the windows cracked, the sky huge and empty, and mine. In the box under the certificates lay a letter from the fair's jury. I smoothed it with my palm, read the sentence that had hung somewhere behind everything I'd done since this entrant demonstrates potential for leadership in the future of education. Even now the words pressed fingerprints into me. Potential, leadership, education. Concepts that felt too big for a kid in a borrowed blazer but somehow fit anyway. I changed my last name at 18. I did it on a Monday because the courthouse lines were shorter and because I could make it between a shift at the cafe and a night class. On the form, I wrote Quinn with a hand that surprised me by not shaking. I told myself it wasn't leaving so much as arriving, giving my gratitude a place to live where I could see it every day. I told my parents after the fact because I was cowardly or kind. Even now I can't pick which. Mom kept stirring a pot as if momentum could make the conversation less real. Dad asked how long it would take the DMV. Brielle blinked and joked about how the signature would look on a diploma. We didn't talk about it again, but something invisible recentered after that, tilted toward the child who matched the plaques on the wall. Independence became my armor. I learned to pay first and ask later, to solve quietly, to carry the beam so no one had to notice the weight. In college and then Seattle, that armor hardened into habit. It was easier to let people assume I was fine than to explain the space between me and the shelf of trophies downstairs. Easier to show up with new light bulbs and a fixed sink than to ask anyone to remember my coffee preference. I set the letter back, lifted the silver pin, and in the angle of the glass I saw the adult version of that kid, shoulders a little tighter, eyes a little more sure. Down the hall, someone laughed at something on TV. Downstairs, a timer chimed. Family time has a sound, and it isn't always music. If I hadn't changed my name, would anything have been different? Would a different signature have kept my birthday on the calendar, made Dad's questions travel all the way to answers, made Mom's pride show up loud instead of in whispers to neighbors? Or would the house have found another way to write me in pencil? The box thudded shut. I slid it back under the bed, and for the first time in years didn't feel like I was shoving myself into the dark with it. The phone on the nightstand pulsed once office again, and I stared at the word until it steadied. The jury letter's sentence kept ringing. Leadership in the future of education. I wasn't 18 anymore. I was here in this house that kept forgetting me, with a life a few states over that could not be ignored forever. The air smelled like apples and new decisions. I stood, squared the duvet, and headed downstairs to the kitchen where the cake box sat open, and the blue letters on the leftover frosting still read, Zeph, as if repetition could make it true. Seattle had a way of swallowing you whole and spitting you back out only if you fought hard enough. When I first arrived, I lived on takeout noodles and the stiff couch of a shared office downtown, the kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and carpets that smelled like coffee stains and ambition. My life was a string of 16-hour days, lines of code glowing green and white, and a faith that if I built long enough and hard enough, something would crack open. I rose from junior coder to project lead to director, before most people my age had figured out a 401k. By 25, I signed the papers that birthed AITA Solutions. I didn't celebrate. I went back to the couch, ate cold ramen, and opened a new project file. The breakthrough came when one of our pilots at a Seattle public school boosted student scores 35% in a semester. Suddenly, venture capitalists wanted in. $6 million poured into my inbox, and within months we signed a $50 million contract with the school system. Overnight, my cramped workspace became a 2-floor office in South Lake Union, and the couch was replaced by ergonomic chairs we didn't know how to adjust. The growth was blinding: 200 employees, press features, Forbes lists, deadlines that stacked like dominoes. From my penthouse in Belltown, I could see the Space Needle flickering each night, a postcard view of success. The elevator was glass, climbing past city lights that reminded me I had built this life from nothing. Inside, though, my dining table stayed set for one. On the edge of my desk sat a framed family photo, half hidden behind screens tracking KPIs, the faces blurred by glare. I stared at it often, wondering if I should call, then never knowing what I would say if they asked how I really lived. Sundays were ritual. The phone rang, my mother talking about Brielle's yoga workshops and her growing Instagram, following my father grunting approval from somewhere nearby. "How's work, Zephyr?" she'd ask in the lull, a question folded politely between errands. "It's fine," I always answered. "Busy, but fine." That was enough. She would pivot to Brielle's next event, her travel schedule, her ideas for sponsorships. I hung up each week, both relieved and hollow. Nora Callahan, my assistant turned confidant, knew more about me than anyone in my family. She managed my calendar with precision-marked urgent calls with the label office and shielded me from reporters who wanted quotes on education equity. She also knew my fear that if my family ever saw me clearly, they'd only see dollar signs. So when the Harper house needed something, Nora handled it. A new television arrived at Christmas with a return address labeled Corporate Holiday Raffle. The leaky roof was fixed after a check from Boise Community Fund. When Mom's school received an iPad for her literacy program, she thanked a regional grant she'd never applied for. Dad's hardware store bills were softened by reward points credited at the exact right time. None of them ever suspected me. They believed in chance and small-town generosity and luck. I wanted them to. The anonymity was a shield that let me care without being defined by what I could buy. Still, each payment pulled at me. Every time Nora reported another bill discreetly covered, I wondered how close I was to being unmasked, to being recast not as son or brother, but as benefactor, as walking wallet. I wanted them to know me, yet I worked hard to keep them blind. On my screen one night flashed a subject line. Meeting confirmed, Minister of Education, Paris. Nora highlighted it bright red, marked the calendar with office, and underlined it twice. The kind of event that could reshape the company. The kind of event that lived in a world far from Boise's red-roofed house. I told her to push it aside until after my birthday. She laughed and reminded me I was flying back in economy on a ticket booked under my middle name, renting a Camry like a man on a business trip. I told her that was the point. I didn't want to arrive as a headline. I wanted a dinner with my family, a cake with the right name, a seat at a table where I wasn't competing with a travel calendar pinned to the wall. I clicked confirm on the flight to Boise. Alone in my penthouse, the city spread beneath me, I rehearsed the simple picture I kept clinging to: a meal, a song, a candle, recognition that I existed beyond fine. For once, I wanted to know if I could keep the two worlds separate long enough to speak as a son and not a CEO. The house smelled like oregano when I walked in on the night of my 31st birthday. The dining table was covered with a faded cloth, the overhead light too bright, the center crowded by pizza boxes, instead of the reservation I'd once imagined at the bistro. I slid into my chair, looking at the grease-stained cardboard as Mom set out plates with an excitement that didn't feel aimed at me. "We've already put the deposit down," she said as she served a slice heavy with olives. "Italy and France, plus a special stop in Bali for Brielle's retreat. We had to shuffle some things, but it's worth it. These experiences change lives." Dad added numbers like he always did. "Hotel in Florence costs as much as a whole birthday dinner at the bistro. It's a trade-off, son, you understand." I chewed and swallowed the taste of olives bitter against the roof of my mouth. It wasn't about the restaurant. It wasn't about the olives. It was about the math they kept doing, where I always equaled fine and Brielle equaled priority. I reached for my water, keeping my face still. Across the table, Brielle laughed, scrolling through her phone. "When we're in London, I'll shoot a whole series of travel vlogs. Maybe I'll do a live Q&A from the Eiffel Tower." "Can you imagine?" She turned to me with a grin. "What about you, Zeph? Who's this office that keeps calling some secret admirer a fan club?" The phone on the counter buzzed as if on cue, the screen flashing bright. I flipped it over quickly, forcing a smile. "Nothing important." Dad leaned back, trying again. "So what is it you're working on now?" "Still the, education stuff." Before I could answer, Mom leaned forward, voice eager. "Let's finish Brielle's schedule first. She needs to finalize her Bali yoga program, Richard." The opening closed. My words stayed in my throat, a knot no one noticed. I excused myself to fetch another glass of water, slipping into the hallway. That was when I heard the mom's low murmur to Dad. "He's fine, Richard. His brain makes everything easy for him. He doesn't need us. Brielle does." The words landed like weights I'd been carrying for years, but had never heard said out loud. I gripped the counter, listening to the truth I always suspected, given voice in the casual certainty of my parents. When I returned, Brielle was holding up her ticket to London, the printout flapping as she explained her plan for reels and posts. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call, but a message sliding across the screen: "Jet is ready. Minister confirmed for Paris." The glow caught my eye and hers. I slid the phone into my pocket, but not before I felt the collision of two lives pressing against each other: her ticket for a vacation and mine for a summit that could alter the course of thousands of students. Neither one acknowledged by the other. I sat down and forced another bite of pizza, the taste turning to ash. Around me, laughter and plans for layovers filled the room. The wall behind us wore Brielle's European calendar like a crown. My birthday had become a footnote under her journey. Everything I'd built, every sacrifice, existed in silence while the noise of her next adventure filled the air. The fork scraped my plate and echoed louder than it should have. If the truth broke free tonight, would they meet it with pride, or would they reach out for what they thought it could buy them? The question sat in my chest as heavy as the olives I swallowed whole. The cake sat on the table like an afterthought, its frosting already smudged where the lid had pressed down. In blue piping it read, "Happy Birthday." Zeph, the wrong name, staring at me like a reminder carved in sugar. My mother clapped her hands together, eager, her voice trembling with cheer. "Make a wish, honey," she said, leaning closer with the lighter, her eyes darting to Brielle's excited phone screen as if the candlelight belonged to both of us. I inhaled, ready to play my part again, when my phone lit up across the table. The word "office" flashed bright against the wood. The sound cut through the room like a blade. I froze. For a second I thought about silencing it again, swallowing another piece of myself. But something inside me broke loose. I pressed the button and lifted it to my ear. Nora's voice filled the room, calm and efficient. "Boss, the private jet is ready." La Maurice or Four Seasons Paris? The silence was immediate, suffocating. Dad's fork slipped from his hand, hit the floor, and rattled in the space where no one breathed. Mom's mouth hung open. Brielle's phone stopped recording mid-sentence. The air itself felt different, charged like the world had been turned inside out in one sentence. I looked at their faces, then set the phone down. "You want to know? Fine. I'm the CEO of AITA Solutions. 200 employees. 50 million in contracts. Forbes put me on their list years ago, but I guess you never looked." My voice shook with something I couldn't name, anger, exhaustion, maybe relief. "That's who I am. That's what I've been doing while you planned Bali retreats and European calendars." Brielle's eyes narrowed. "You hid it. Just so you could pull this stunt, to rub it in our faces." Her tone cut sharp, more accusation than shock. I laughed once, dry and bitter. "I hid it because I wanted to be your brother. Your son. Not a walking bank account. But maybe that was wishful thinking." Dad cleared his throat, words fumbling but firm. "We did focus on Brielle, because we thought you had it handled. You've always been the strong one. She needed us more." That hit deeper than I expected. Confirmation of every suspicion I'd carried since childhood. "So you assumed I didn't deserve the same care because I could survive without it?" Mom's voice rose, trembling. "We asked about your work, Zephyr. We cared." "Did you?" I snapped. "Did you once type my name into Google? Did you ever wonder why the biggest contract in the state's education history didn't make it to our dinner table?" No one answered. The cake flickered in front of me, the wrong name glowing in wax light. Brielle crossed her arms, her voice sharp with resentment. "If you're really that rich, why not pay for the trip? Then Mom and Dad wouldn't have had to cancel your birthday at all." That broke me. I stood, chair legs screeching against the floor. "Because my love isn't a credit card. Because I wanted one night, one cake, one dinner, where I mattered without a price tag." My voice cracked and I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my keys, the sound of them jangling louder than anything in the room, and walked out. Behind me, no one called my name. The door shut like the end of a chapter. The Boise Inn greeted me with silence. The suite was plain beige walls and a bed too stiff, but it felt like air after drowning. My phone buzzed again. I answered and Nora's voice softened for once. I pushed it. "I made that call loud because you can't keep hiding forever. You needed them to see you." I sat on the bed staring at the bland painting on the wall, unsure whether to thank her or scream. The relief of release tangled with grief so raw it ached in my chest. Had I lost my family forever, or was this the cut that had to bleed before it could ever heal? I woke in the dim light of the Boise Inn, the ceiling fan circling slowly, the world quieter than I remembered it could be. A knock startled me. I opened the door to find my father, his face lined deeper than usual, his eyes heavy with something I rarely saw: humility. "Can I come in?" he asked. We sat in silence for a long moment, the air between us tight. Finally, he spoke. "My father was like you. Brilliant, self-sufficient. The kind of man who seemed to walk ahead of everyone else. My parents assumed he didn't need them, so they poured everything into his siblings. He never forgave them for it. I guess I repeated the same mistake. I swallowed the words, bitter. I don't want to be strong because you leave me no choice. I want to be seen. Not just assumed okay." He nodded, eyes wet. "I hear you now. I'm sorry." Later that morning, I returned to the house. The kitchen smelled of apples and cinnamon. Mom pulled a pie from the oven, the crust golden, the filling made with less sugar, just the way I liked it. She set it down gently. I thought, maybe I could get it right this time. Her voice cracked. "I always told myself you didn't need me. I see now that was an excuse." Brielle sat at the table, mascara smudged her phone forgotten beside her. She looked up, eyes red. Those gifts. The TV, the roof, the iPad for Mom's school. I thought someone else loved them more than I did. I was jealous. I felt like a shadow in my own house. I stared at her, caught between anger and recognition. That was me. I did all of that. Dad entered then, shuffling papers in his hands, looking for distraction. A white envelope slipped free and landed on the floor. I bent to pick it up. The words printed across it froze the room: Boise Bolt credit paid in full by Quinn Enterprises. The air went still. Mom pressed her hand to her mouth. Dad's eyes widened. Brielle gasped. So they knew. The secret generosity that had kept them afloat wasn't luck or community. It was me. Brielle's voice cracked. "Do you even love me? Or am I just the girl who stole your light?" Her words carried years of unspoken rivalry, the ache of both of us competing for something as basic as belonging. Mom sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "There was a year we forgot your birthday entirely. We were throwing Brielle a surprise party, and by the time I realized it was too late. I've never forgiven myself. But I never said it either." Tears streaked down her face. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. Nora. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Paris is waiting. Do you want me to cancel everything? I looked at my family, raw and exposed in ways they'd never been." "No," I said slowly. "Not cancel. Come with me. All of you." They stared, stunned. The idea hung in the air, impossible and terrifying, but also new. For the first time, we weren't hiding. Every truth was laid bare: the favoritism, the gifts, the neglect, the love we didn't know how to give. We sat in the kitchen together, the pie cooling between us, and there was no pretending left. The question lingered heavier than any silence. Could one trip, one chance at something shared mend years of being unseen? Or was I reaching for a bridge already burned? The hills of Tuscany glowed gold as the sun slid low across the vineyards. Our villa's courtyard was strung with soft lights, a long wooden table dressed in linen stretching beneath them. I had arranged every detail months in advance, but my family looked around as if they had stumbled into a dream that couldn't possibly be meant for us. Dad kept clearing his throat, glancing at the horizon, while Mom's hands fluttered over the plates like she didn't quite believe they belonged there. I poured wine into glasses, the deep red catching the fading light. Brielle propped her phone against a bottle and pressed record. This trip, she told her audience, is proof that if you work hard, you can make anything happen. I saved, I planned, I manifested. I sat across from her, quiet, letting the camera roll the lie heavy between us. Dinner began with bread, olive oil, and small silences. Dad raised his glass first, his voice rough. "This is rare. I don't say thank you enough for the chance to be here together." He paused, then admitted what I had never heard him confess. "I never understood your work, Zephyr. Education and computers, it sounded abstract. I thought it didn't matter the way Brielle's goals did because I could see hers. I was wrong." The words hung there, brittle but real. I set my glass down. I don't want repayment. I don't need you to cover the bills I've already covered. I need to know were you ever proud of me. Not what I gave, but who I am. Mom's eyes filled and spilled over. I bragged to neighbors about you, she whispered. Every time your name appeared in an article, every story I overheard about your company, I wanted to shout it. But when I came home, I stayed quiet. I didn't want Brielle to feel less. I thought I was protecting her. Brielle's chair scraped back as she stood, eyes flashing. So I'm the fragile one, the one you tiptoe around while he gets to play martyr. Even here, he's stealing the spotlight. Her voice rose and the camera on the bottle kept recording. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened an email. I laid it on the table. The seal of the French Ministry of Education filled the screen, the message clear gratitude for software that had lifted thousands of students. This isn't about spotlight, I said evenly. It's about truth. The silence that followed was louder than the outburst. Brielle's breath came sharp, her face hard. Then she turned and ran the camera, still blinking red, capturing everything she hadn't wanted the world to see. For a moment I sat still, staring at the abandoned recording. Then I pushed my chair back. For once, I didn't want to let her write the ending. I followed her into the vineyard path, my footsteps crunching gravel. When I called her name, it wasn't as a CEO or a benefactor. It was as her brother, desperate to be seen, not as competition, but as family. The vineyards whispered in the wind. Ahead of me, her silhouette blurred against the last of the sun. Could I close the distance between us, or had the years carved a gap too wide? A year later, I stood once again in Boise outside the brick facade of the bistro. This time, there was no cancellation, no substitution, no quiet dismissal. The reservation was kept, the table waiting inside. My 32nd birthday began not with excuses, but with presence. The restaurant smelled of garlic and butter. My family sat around a circular table, a framed photo from Paris placed at its center, proof of a journey that had cracked us open. Dad leaned back, pride subtle but steady. I've been advising the new Meridian branch, he said. It feels good to put my skills to use again. Mom smiled, smoothing the tablecloth. My school's reading program uses your software now. I finally understand what you've built. It's not just business, it's changing lives. Brielle cleared her throat. Her voice was softer than I remembered, but steady. I'm not just doing videos anymore. I've been interning in marketing. It's harder than I thought, but I want to earn it. For real this time. The waiter set down a cake, the frosting perfect, the name spelled in full, Happy Birthday Zephyr. Mom touched my hand. We once assumed your strength meant you didn't need us. We were wrong. We want to write a new story with you, one where we don't make that mistake again. Before I could answer, a man from the next table leaned over. Are you Zephyr Quinn? My son uses your program. He's never loved learning until now. Thank you. He clapped my shoulder, his gratitude casual, undeniable. My parents and Brielle sat frozen, watching the recognition they had once ignored arrive uninvited. I smiled, then raised my glass. There's something else. I'm starting a scholarship. The Harper Quinn Fund. Both names because both shaped me. For better and for worse. The words softened the air. Dad nodded. Mom's lips trembled. Brielle blinked fast. For once, none of us argued about who was seen more. The candles flickered, reflecting in their eyes. I leaned in, exhaled, and blew them out, not with a wish for recognition, but with the quiet knowledge that I finally had it. The camera flash popped. A photo captured us all together, laughter spilling as the waiter tried to make us look at once. In that frame, I wasn't a wallet or a shadow or a secret success. I was their son, their brother, sitting at a table where we could all finally see each other. Scars would remain, but scars meant healing. And for the first time, the story we were writing felt like ours, not mine alone. Looking back on everything I've shared, I realized this story was never just about money, careers, or even success. It was about the ache of being invisible in your own family, about the weight of silence, and about what it takes to break it. For years, I thought survival was enough, that if I kept building, kept giving, kept proving, one day they'd finally see me. But what I've learned is that recognition only matters when it comes from a place of truth, not obligation. That night in Boise when the fork hit the floor and the silence cut through us was the moment everything changed. It hurt more than I can describe, but it also forced us to stop pretending. The pain was the doorway, and on the other side was honesty, messy and imperfect but real. If you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever sat at a table where your name was forgotten or your voice cut short, know that you are not alone. Your worth doesn't depend on whether others acknowledge it. But sometimes sharing your story can be the first step toward changing everything. Thank you for staying with me through mine. If it resonated, I'd love to know you're here. Drop a listening in the comments or tell me where you're from. It means more than you know. And please consider subscribing to this channel. Each connection reminds me that telling the truth has power and that no one has to carry their silence alone.